Welcome to the Mike Litton Experience Podcast. Mike has over 31 years experience in real estate, finance, and investing. He's passionate about being a father, a teacher, a realtor, an investor, and a leader. Everyone has a story, and our passion is to help them tell it. And now, introducing the host of the Mike Litton Experience, Mike Litton.
So what can you expect from the Mike Litton Experience? You can expect stories that will inspire, motivate, advice that will sharpen your focus, and expert information on real estate, finance, and market conditions. So you go to Brown.
I go to Brown.
You finish Brown.
While I'm still at Brown, there was a gentleman, I can't remember his name, doesn't matter, out of Minneapolis, who was a chief engineer. In fact, he was one of the first there in the Twin Cities to develop FM stereo.
Ooh.
Or develop stereo.
There you go.
They experimented, I don't know, clear back before we had stereo. The first time I ever heard stereo was at a big equipment display there in the Minneapolis at their auditorium. Went over there and the guy he put a headset on and he was playing music. And the first time we'd heard, because this was back in the 50s.
Yeah.
Didn't have it. I go, whoa. So then later on they experimented with 2 radio stations. They would have you tune into one over here for the right side,
Yeah.
and tune in another station. They tell you which one, and put that radio over here.
Right.
This side is playing the right track of a song.
Right.
This radio
That's how you
station.
get your stereo.
Yeah. That was the beginning of it all.
Isn't that
and
something?
then it slowly evolved into where they could do it with the signal,
Gotcha.
FM. They actually created AM stereo later on. It's not quite as efficient. It doesn't. I'm getting carried away here.
No,
Okay,
Let me ask you a
Brown
question.
Institute.
Let
Pardon
me ask you a question. You mentioned that, and I experienced this with 760 KFMB, but in the middle of the night, AM stations have to turn their signal down.
When the sun goes down.
Why?
Okay. Because your radio signal, you have 2 signals come off an AM tower.
Okay.
You have what they call a ground wave
Okay.
and a sky wave.
Okay.
Well, those sky waves will go up and they'll hit a layer. It's called the ionosphere.
Okay.
We've got stratosphere, troposphere, ionosphere.
Okay.
That ionosphere layer has electrons in it for some reason, and an AM signal will not penetrate that. It'll bounce back off from it.
Okay.
Okay, so, but for some reason, that ionosphere is down much lower altitude. So your AMs don't bounce that far,
Okay.
but as soon as the sun goes down, and God only knows why, that ionosphere goes up, I don't know what altitude, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Now, that changes your angle of the signal. That's why you're driving down the road in a far off station at night, it'll come booming in on you and you go, wow, then all of a sudden it's gone. Well, what's happening, that sky wave is bouncing down, hits the ground, boom, goes back up in the air, hits it again. You're driving through the skips of it. Now, if you have a station back east on my frequency, which the station I end up Montana, KSEM, we were 1150 on the dial,
Right.
but you can have another AM on 1150, but you have to protect each other because at night, that signal will bounce clear across the country. Well, you can imagine what a mess you'd have.
Oh, sure.
You'd have all the interference in the world.
Yeah.
In fact, just to prove how far a signal can bounce, we used to go on at 3 o'clock in the morning at a testing time so they could check our frequency to see how close we're on to our actual frequency.
Yeah.
You had to have that checked because you can wander off some. But we didn't have the equipment, our engineers didn't have that kind of equipment. You had to do it we had a guy clear out in Oregon that would check our station because at night they would allow you to go with your daytime signal.
Yeah.
And that guy out there could hear me very good. And I had
All the way from Minnesota.
yeah. Well, Montana at the time.
Oh, from
later.
Montana.
Yeah,
Okay,
this
okay.
this is later when I end up in Montana.
I get you.
But wherever you're
We haven't got Montana.
directional station, yeah, right, yeah,
We will though, I promise.
yeah. So you end up protecting. I tell you.
So they have to turn that back so that you don't have all
Yeah,
this
we have 4 tower
bowl
arrays.
of spaghetti kind of thing.
Yeah, what you do, you end up technically you have one tower that works against another one, and they can set up a certain pattern. We could go north-south strong, and you have certain signal strength of your pattern. Our pattern was like in a figure 8. The side we had to pull in, 15 miles from us, you couldn't hear us at night.
Gotcha.
You couldn't hear us. That's how tight you can bring a signal in.
Yeah.
I think, okay, we're going to bore you again, folks.
No.
That
I just always wanted to ask
that
question.
type of-
I never knew the answer.
No, a lot of people don't.
Yeah.
And a lot of people, when I tell them, don't care.
Well, I would ask.
I know.
I would ask at KFMB, and nobody could tell me.
Well, they couldn't.
I mean, they just said, "Oh, it's just an FCC regulation."
No,
okay,
yeah,
well,
no,
but why?
no, no.
You know, I always want to know. You know what I mean?
You'd have a mess. And we
There
have,
it is.
and the United States has, how it would say, we cooperate with Canada because Canada can bounce all over us.
Sure.
Now, Mexico, they'll have 100,000 watt stations that can come and would boom in on you. But anyway, I'll tell you how that technology got developed on phasing antennas, it's called, for directional. World War II, clear out in the South Pacific. Excuse me, I've got to have a drink of water for a second. World War II, islands way out there in the South Pacific, we would have the Japanese would be on one end of the island and our U.S. troops on the other end of an island, for example. I don't know, it was the military, probably was military engineers that developed a system with towers that would phase against each other. They could send a signal clear back to be heard in San Francisco, and these Japanese on this end of that island could not hear that signal. That's where that phenomena came in. Isn't that something?
Yeah,
So then it was applied to commercial broadcasts, and is to this day.
Yeah. You know, a lot of the things that we enjoy as technology in the civilian world,
Yes.
was started either by NASA or by the military.
Yes.
You know, the combination,
It was.
that kind of thing.
Yeah,
So,
even our computers, I think,
Yeah.
were started by the military.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's why. And now people ask, well, how come an FM station will be 100,000 watts? You know, well, that's 100,000 watts of radiated power. You don't have transmitters that big. You have antennas. You ever look at an FM antenna? You'll see a bunch of rings around these poles that send up. Well, each one of those is an antenna. And if you and I had wanted 100,000 watts of effective radiated power, it's called, we would have a 10,000 watt transmitter, but we would put it into these things and we could bring it up to 100,000.
I got you.
10 times what we're doing.
I got you.
Okay, now,
So 10,000 each.
AM signal, that skywave and that ground wave, is a much lower frequency.
Mhm.
FM, we're talking, 96 megacycles,
Right.
million. AM, we're talking 1,000 cycles.
Right.
It's kind of basic, but we're talking a lot slower signal we're putting out. And you put out a slow signal, it's kind of like if you throw a ball and throw it easy, it'll follow every little hill and so forth. If you throw it fast, like,
Yeah.
it
Not gonna
won't.
hit a contour.
No,
Yeah.
FM is pretty much line of sight. I don't care how much power you got. It's so fast, it's straight out there. It won't go down into, it won't go here and get shadowed. So that's the difference between the AM and FM.
That's awesome. See, I never knew any of that. This is all the stuff
No.
we learned from hanging out with you.
Yeah, well,
So let me ask you a question. So
Yeah.
you go to Brown Institute.
okay,
Where's your first radio
all right.
job?
I did a little part-time at a station there at Anoka, Minnesota, but it was just weekend stuff. I did very little. I was still in school. It was fun for me to go to a station then,
Sure.
man, just to sit in the chair. And
Yeah, just try it out.
yeah. Just,
And it's, by the way, being in a studio, in a radio studio, with a microphone in front of you, and a sound person, you know, on the other side of it. I mean, there's something about that that's just electrifying, isn't it? I mean, it just, maybe it's just me, but it would charge me up, and I would do my hour every Saturday afternoon. I'd do my hour, and then I'd walk out of there and I wouldn't touch the ground for like 4 or 5 hours.
Yeah.
I mean, it was
well,
the darkest thing.
You're a different bird.
Well, I am. That's true. That's true. But there was something about being there, and something about something about broadcasting, something about, you know, it just.
The only thing, you didn't have, I'm not trying to down what you're doing, I admire what you're doing. You were specialized in your real estate and knew what you want to do went in. Now, when you've got to be there on a 4-hour shift or 6 hours, to me, later on, as I became a program director, I didn't have any announcers go over 4 hours if you're working hard at it, because it's hard. It's not easy work.
Yeah.
You know.
I never did that, by the way.
Yeah, that's the difference.
Yeah, the most I ever did was an hour every day, 5 days a week.
Yeah.
And that took a lot. That took a lot by itself.
It did. So. But if you did like a 6-hour shift at night, go on here at 6 till midnight, it's work. And it's hard. If you want to go somewhere, and one of our instructors said, it's going to be, you never know who's listening to you, who might say, I want you. Yeah. And I don't care if it's, you've been on that air 6 hours, if you want to go somewhere, you sound good.
Yeah.
Now I'm too low.
And just as good the 6th hour as the first hour.
And what's a little something I learned too, and program directors around the country will learn, if you want to go to work for me and I needed a tape of what you sound like, you send me a tape. Mm-hmm. Well, what are you? When you do that, you're going to the studio, you're your very best.
You're fresh.
You cut it, you send it to me.
Right.
Now, I want to drive through your town after you've been on the air and been out on a party the night before and came on the air and
they don't feel like being there.
You're sick.
Yeah. You don't feel like
your wife's pregnant and because you teach guys, when you come into that control room, you leave that world of yours behind you.
Yeah.
The audience couldn't care less. They want to hear. So that you had to mentally train yourself, forget what's going on in your life.
Yeah.
How you're still projecting. I want to hear you at 11:30 at night and you've been on the air and you've had phone calls from people, you got the boss called, I need this done. Small station market, especially, you end up doing more than just sitting there.
Yeah.
Now I want to hear what you sound like at 11:30 at night. It's going to be a lot different than that tape that you see. Yeah. So you learn that. But
I never drank more coffee in my life than I did when I was on radio. You know, there was something about it that helped my demeanor, but my energy level, right? But it also helped my voice.
Sure. Oh,
that warm liquid.
Keep it lubricated.
Yeah.
Stay away from dairy products.
Yeah.
Dairy products will clog up your throat. Yeah, you learn different techniques. Now, back to what happened to me. This guy that we started out, the engineer that helped develop the stereo, bought a little radio station in St. Peter, Minnesota. It's about 80 miles south of the cities. Gustavus Adolphus College is there, big deal. But that's kind of, you remember the old days of the Green Pea Giant, the Valley of the Green?
Yeah.
That's it. That's in St. Peter and Le Sueur, Minnesota.
There you go.
We were right in the middle of, they called it the pea pack down there.
I love it.
Yeah.
There you go.
So I went from dairy farming down there down to pea pack country.
There you go. So that was Green Valley.
That's where the Green Valley is.
Oh my God.
The Valley of the Green Giant.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, I remember.
Yeah. Now, so I'm at St. Peter, and they had been a country station.
Okay.
Now, back in the 50s, it was hard to find many country radio stations.
Really?
We used to get one out of Waterloo, Iowa, and then somewhere else at night it would skip in.
Yeah.
But here was KRBI, I think was my first station. Anyway, this guy came to the Brown Institute. I'll get back to KRBI. Came in and he says, I need an announcer down there, a combo man. No, he didn't, because they were only a daytimer.
Gotcha.
Okay, if you can't get if you don't want to bother putting out all this directional equipment and stuff at night, you can broadcast during the day. But each month, your time varies. At 6 o'clock, boom, you're shutting the station off. I can't broadcast anymore because I'm going to bother somebody somewhere.
Right.
So you're a daytimer.
Right.
And this was a daytimer. So the school, I didn't, unbeknownst to me, played them some tapes of different announcers. Mm-hmm. And the guy listened and he liked what I did.
There you go.
So he hired me, bragging, I was still in school.
Oh,
so I had my first job before I got out of school.
That's awesome.
But I was so excited, like you learned the business. I was driving, I said, well, should I finish school? Yeah, finish your school first. So on the weekends, I would drive the 80 or 100 miles down to St. Peter and pull a shift for nothing.
Yeah.
Because I wanted to learn it.
Yeah.
I wanted to learn the business.
Yeah.
Of course, the guys I'm in class with, they could hear our station in Minneapolis. Boy, they're all listening. Here's Bob's, get down, you know. Yeah. So that's how hard I worked at it. Plus, I was working at a factory then while I'm going to radio school, and weekends driving down there for nothing. Wore myself ragged. Oh, yeah. But anyway, went to work at St. Peter in the spring of 1959. And it was a country station. Back to my country station. It was one in Minneapolis and one at St. Peter. Yeah. Well, they would do a Grand Ole Opry show once a month in Minneapolis. Yeah. Ray Price, people like that would be there. I used to go there when I was in high school. Listen. So when these people come in and do a Grand Ole Opry, they like to go on radio, you know, talk about their records and stuff. So they only had two options. They had the one there in Minneapolis. One of the announcers I used to listen to was, he did 6 days on the road. We're going to make it home tonight.
Yeah.
Remember that song?
Yeah, I do.
Well, he was a morning man at a station in Minneapolis who wrote that. I can say his name. But anyway, so after I got in the business, I had a chance to meet this guy who I used to listen to.
That's cool.
So they would come into the station. They would come into the station in Minneapolis, and then they would drive down there. I sat down with George Jones.
Wow.
Yeah, when he came out with White Lightning, you know that. And I had trying to think of some other ones. Gonna Find Me a Bluebird, Marvin Rainwater. I don't know if you go back to that.
Yeah. Did Loretta Lynn ever make it in there?
Loretta Lynn? No, she came down there and did a show though, and I didn't get a chance to interview her.
Did you ever see Coal Miner's Daughter?
Yes. Oh yeah.
Did you see where they toured? That wasn't far from where you were on the radio.
No.
That area right there? They must have just missed your station because they went to a whole bunch of.
Oh, I know, but they were more in the south. They weren't up in Minnesota.
Well, they were down in Tennessee.
Tennessee, yeah.
Right, Kentucky area, that kind of thing. But they came up into, was it Ohio? I don't think they got as far north as Ohio. They didn't quite get to Minnesota, I don't think, but they got close in that. You know, when you look at that map of where they were going,
yes,
they got close. I mean, that was right about that time.
We would have some people stop in. Well, we were, a smaller market, but it was so. Here I was a kid, still 20. I was just 20 years old, and I would have these. So I had to learn because I don't remember Brown Institute training as much in interviewing.
Yeah.
I look back, it was all more on eloquence and speech and that type of thing. In fact, they used to advertise radio and TV school. And I asked one of the instructors one day, I says, what's this TV stuff? He says, well, didn't we teach you don't pick your nose if you're on television? He says, that's enough. I said, well, maybe.
There's your formal training.
Yeah, I forgot that you had that. I want to go back a little bit. I had a lot of fun. Well, like I said, I was in radio school. I met another guy. His name was Dave Nixon. And Dave was down from that Nebraska area. And he was a character and a half. He and I had more fun. We had an instructor one day. He says, you know what, someday, if I ever own a radio station, I says, Norris and Nixon, you're coming to work for me.
Oh, I love
He says, we probably won't make any money, but we're going to have a lot of fun.
That's right.
So that was a nice compliment.
Yeah.
And Dave, here I'm getting off subject, but Dave went back and then was able to work at the 50,000 watt station in Lincoln, Nebraska.
Oh my gosh.
He was that good.
That's where my son went to college.
And I used to bring him with me down to St. Peter on the weekends, and both Dave and I would do a thing north. Here we are, just kids in radio school. What fun that was. Later on, he got a job at a station in Minneapolis. Wow. And I'm back there on vacation. I know he's working. It's been a few years since I've seen Dave, but somebody told me how I knew he was working at this station. And he was doing a talk thing at night. And I was trying to find his station. It was over close to St. Paul. I don't know if you've ever been in the Twin Cities. It's so hard to find your way around over there. We couldn't find where the studios were. There was even a cop we stopped and asked. He says, I don't know, it's somewhere over there.
Wow.
Well, I couldn't get through, so we stopped at a phone booth. I had a couple of my buddies from Minnesota I'm with. We stopped at a phone booth because I have the number of the station, and he's doing a night talk thing, but the only way I can get to him is go on his talk show.
He used to call in.
Yeah.
Right?
That's what I did.
Oh my gosh.
I called in and he said, whatever, KEWB, I think, Minneapolis. Yeah. Whatever it is, and I called in and I said, Dave, yeah. This is Bob Norris. Well, Bob Norris, and here we are, and my buddies are sitting out in the car, they're going, so he talked on the air for a minute, and then he quickly goes to a commercial and says, where are you? And told me how to get there. So we went and then had breakfast. What a fun time, but here I am. I got to go on his live show to find out where he is. I don't know why I think of that. But
well, that's a neat memory.
So, yes. You know? So by the way, after I'm at that station, then then they switch. They take away the country format, this new owner. Mm-hmm. To me, a lot of people listen to the station, but you couldn't get advertisers to admit that they would listen to your station. That was a tough thing to overcome back in the 50s.
No kidding. We hope you enjoyed another episode of the Mike Litton Experience. If you did, do us a favor, smash that subscribe button, tell your friends, family, and coworkers about our program, and wherever you get your podcasts, please leave us a rating. It helps us to connect with quality people just like you.
And that's a wrap. Another episode of the Mike Litton Experience in the books. Reach out to Mike on Instagram at Litton Realty. Want to meet with Mike? Check out Calendly.com/Rio760.